G'day guys and welcome, my name is Michael and I am the DeadAussieGamer, here to share with you my tips, tricks, ideas and strategies for playing and running tabletop role-playing games. Once again joining us is the ever-lovely Janet from World Anvil. G'day Janet!
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing absolutely splendiferous, and today our topic of discussion is role-playing the other gender. Now, what we're going to be talking about today specifically are design elements for both creating and portraying characters within a role-playing game space that may be a gender that you either don't identify with or may struggle portraying, that hopefully we'll be able to discuss the positive sides of things, the negative sides of things, and all the other sides of things, up, down, left and right, and what have you.
The myriad aspects of character creation. It's going to be gorgeous.
It's absolutely going to be gorgeous. So, starting us off on a very positive note, what are some of the positive design elements you would suggest when designing a character from an opposing gender? Well, I say opposing, but, you know, an other gender.
Yeah, another
I mean,
gender.
we're not battling, are we? I mean, the war of this.
We could, but I don't suggest we do. We're quite far away.
Yes, and also I have noodle arms, so I would lose that fight.
I'm small.
Sorry, man.
I would not win this fight.
We're both quite small. I mean, I want to point out this is not a fight. This is like two baby chicks during Easter trying to peck each other to death. It's not going to happen.
Oh, the romance. So let's talk about positive character traits.
Yes, let's.
I think that the way that we view the two genders is often much more different than is really true. So if you meet a woman that is kind, it's just the same as meeting a man that is kind, right? If you meet a woman that is strong, it's just the same as meeting a man that is strong. So I think it's definitely possible to overthink gender when you're creating characters. But I think one of the most important things is to, think about, if you're going from a grit perspective, think about what class you're creating, why they would be drawn to that class, and how they operate within it. So, for example, if you're creating a paladin, they tend to be strong. But often women are not considered, to be physically strong. Women are weaker than men in general because we develop less body mass. It's a biological fact. We've developed less muscle mass.
That, and if you played some of the earlier editions of Dungeons and Dragons, well, you know what we're talking about here.
Right, exactly. But there's no reason why a woman wouldn't develop strength. So you could absolutely be a strong woman. I mean, the character that I play in Ghost of Saltmarsh, Lahuna, strength is her primary characteristic. Intelligence is not. She's not terribly smart, but she's a strong archetypal paladin build. She has high intelligence and high charisma. Sorry, she has a high strength and high charisma, and that is absolutely portrayable as a woman. It's not really a problem. It's just how your body is. You're stronger, and strength can manifest itself in different ways. It doesn't necessarily have to be that you're very bulky. It might be that you have a sinewy strength. So these you shouldn't worry too much about the stats and the gender. You can be whatever you want to be, and whatever works for that character is what I would say. So don't feel pinned in, and then decide how those things manifest themselves physically for your character.
I think I completely agree. I think that expectations and the like can sometimes weigh very heavy on us when we design characters, especially because, I mean, look, we are products of our time, and it is a discussion that is happening all around the world about gender identity and portrayal and things like that. What is offensive, what is not offensive. One thing that I can say you can take away as a positive experience when defining your gender is when you create your character, don't have a gender in mind. Instead, ask yourself the question, do I want to, within the narrative story of my character, explore the topic of gender? If you don't want to, then play the character however you're going to play it, and just assign it whatever gender you feel comfortable with. If you feel comfortable portraying men because you are a man, then fantastic, do that. If you, however, want to explore the notion of what it is like to be a female in a predominantly patriarchal society, then play a female character and explore that with your character. You know, that I think is the most positive thing you could do when designing a character of another gender, is to explore these topics and themes with your GM. Now, that being said, and I believe, Janet, you might be able to agree with me on this, is you should be exploring it, but you shouldn't be holding your narrative hostage to do so. You shouldn't be going into those scenarios where you are condemning everyone for forgetting, for example, that you, a man, are playing a female and they are treating you as such. You should not be condemning people for using the wrong pronoun, because again, this is a fantasy world, and look, we're humans, we're people, we make mistakes during a role-playing game. Instead, just focusing on that element of exploration with your game master, you might find stories where you enter a drow society, which is a matriarchal society. You are playing a male drow, and as such are treated by the females in quite a condescending and rather violent way. You know, that for me is the correct and the positive way to play the other gender design character. What are your thoughts?
So my thoughts are, it depends on the table, it depends on the player, it depends on a myriad set of variations. And it's really about what you want and what your party wants and what your GM wants, and setting expectations for that. So if you go into a space where you want to explore something, and I've played male characters and I've played female characters. I went into a space where we were doing a very short campaign, and I was like, well, I'm going to play a male character. I played a massive male orc. I was the epitome of male maleness. And there was no question of my character's gender at any point. I was just a big, butch, beefy orc. I had hobbies, I had likes, I had dislikes. I was a full character, but I was a full, very male character. And I did that not because I wanted any kind of, I wasn't trying to make any statement. I was just really curious. What is it like to play a male character? And my GM was fine with it, and my party was fine with it, and I was fine with it. So we went ahead and we had a hilarious time. I really enjoyed the character, and I had a very positive experience because I said to everyone, by the way, my character's a man. He's called Graal. He's a giant orc. He looks like this. I introduced him. I introduced the fact that he was a man, even though I am a woman, and that was fine. If you are going in with a particular view to exploring your character as they interact with the world and as the world interacts with them, tell your GM, because you are creating expectations for the game. And if you don't tell your GM, they will not be able to help you. Tell your players, because they will be able to help you. And by talking about these things, you're creating a space that you will succeed and you'll have a positive experience. If you try and keep it to yourself and you try and keep it to a secret, you're not sharing what you expect, and you're going to have a bad time, basically. And that's not what we want. We want everybody to be having fun at the table. We want everyone to come out with a positive experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's my takeaway always. And if people have trouble remembering your pronouns, you can write them on a little sticker on your shirt. It's a great way. You know, if you have, for example, pronouns that don't match who you are and you have forgetful players, if you have pronouns that are world-built pronouns that don't exist in the real world, just put them on your shirt so people remember them.
Cool. Absolutely. Or one of the things that I love doing as well, apart from having obviously really cool minis, is every now and then when I print out my character sheets, I'll have a little bit of paper with an artwork that I'll either ninja from Google, and then just sort of make a little foldy thing that I'll just place in front of my character at all times. That way, whenever I roll dice, whenever I do anything, there is a very nice big picture of my character, or at least how I visualize my character, in front of me so that people can identify that. Having played a few female characters, I have to say that at no point did I ever feel uncomfortable doing so, nor did any of the other players who were experiencing it. The one time I did feel rather uncomfortable, I spoke up about it straight away, and that was because my character was a Pathfinder game, and I was playing a mesmerist, and she was a Galtese, a French enchantress, basically, and she would hypnotize people into doing what she wanted. But she would always have this implication of being a rather loose woman. She would seduce whoever she wanted to, but she would never sleep with anyone. She had very high standards, and she always made it so that they got hypnotized into thinking they enjoyed an entire night of passion and ecstasy. And one of the players um, started in character slut shaming my character. And it was fine the first time. My character is very strong-willed, and like I said, she was actually quite, self-confident. But as he started doing it, the line started to become blurry between him insulting my character and him insulting me and the style of play that I was using. When stuff like that happens, when you begin to feel that way, it's very, very important that you speak up at that point. You have to tell your players, like, hey, look, guys, this is not making me comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say I have an additional story to add to that, which is the first time I played a male character, I played a male character. I didn't make a character who was male. I played a man. It was a horrific failure, and I learned so much from it. He was toxic masculinity on legs. He walked around. He tried to sleep with every bar woman. And you know what? I don't
Tried to sleep with every bar. You've said it already. That's it. He went to every pub, jumped up onto the table, knocked over everyone's drinks, and started humping the counter.
Molesting the furniture.
That's
it. Oh,
it.
God.
And that's where that, boys and girls, is how we have Ottomans.
Oh dear! Don't mention the Ottoman Empire and what made that happen.
Yeah.
Anyway, and that was such an interesting experience for me to think back on, and why it felt. And the reason it felt is because I made a man, not a character. So I had no motivations. I had no likes and dislikes. I hadn't gone through and thought, why is this character in the space? Why are they adventuring? I had some motivations. They were very weak. I was still a very young role player. But my primary concern with making the character was to make a man, and that is why it failed. So I would urge you to learn from my experience and make sure that you are creating well-rounded people who are existing within a world and reacting to the world, and then consider gender and how that might interplay with those complex factors, rather than just making a gender and making that the primary concern of the character, because it doesn't work. People are so much more than their gender. And it's a flop. It will always be a flop compared to where you could go if you thought about the aspects that make somebody a person rather than just make somebody a gender.
Absolutely, and we'll actually, this is a really nice segue to the next part of our topic, which is of course negative elements to designing and playing the other gender. Obviously, in these two cases, being entirely defined by your gender is a very difficult state to be in, or having other people hold you to only be accountable for your gender is one thing. One thing I want to say and kind of stipulate here is gender is not sexuality. They're two entirely different beasts. I could do a whole other video on sexuality, and I probably will, but this is not that video, so I'm not really going to be talking too much about it. But in the same way as Janet was describing, her character was defined by that masculinity. There is also negative stereotypes that exist on every side of every type of gender. And it is important to remember that if we start to define ourselves by those negative elements are going to be defining our style of roleplay. If you are playing someone who is toxic and masculine, then that's what's going to happen. If you are playing someone who is slutty and like kind of the objectified woman, then that's what'll happen to you, because when we roleplay, we are putting ourselves in these positions. You're being treated as the thing that is negative, and that's not a space you want to be playing in. That's not something you want to be exposing yourself to while role playing. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would say always experiment. Um, but it's about positivity and tolerance,
Mm.
and particularly around the table, making sure that people are on board with what you're doing. And if you get into a space where you are getting, slut shamed, for example, which is shocking,
Oh, I've got a story to shock you. Just yeah, carry on.
if you're getting into that space, I think it's very important to say, boom, I am not comfortable with this. Let's talk about it right now.
Mm.
Because if you're not having fun at the table, if you're feeling like shamed or accused or anything at the table, then that's something that you need to talk about with your players and with your GM.
Mm.
If you are feeling that, in my experience, you are not enjoying the character that you have created because you made a mistake in character creation, as I did with the man who was a man and then also a character, then that's something to stand up and say, look, I made a mistake with this character. I need to make some tweaks, or I need to kill them off and make somebody new. These are the choices. So don't be afraid of doing that. That's okay. The whole point is that you're having a positive experience. So standing up and saying, I need to change, we need to make changes, is a good way to make sure that you can move forward and not just leave the campaign, which would be sad.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, I'm going to say something that is going to be very, very unpopular, but the other side of the coin is important too. Now, I'm not saying that I'm one of these people, but I am acknowledging the presence of those who may observe another player at the table who is playing another gender and is in turn not comfortable in that situation. If you find yourself in that situation, it is important to start a dialogue. A, do not feel embarrassed. I mean, yes, there is a lot of... There will definitely be a talk that'll occur, an understanding or trying to explore why you may have an issue with someone playing a gender that is not their own. Inevitably, that will be a far better conversation than trying to conceal your feelings and trying to just harbor and bottle in those negative emotions while you play. Whether or not you want to or not, things like that do come out in small doses and in small ways. And I'm a very big advocate of communication. I'm a very big advocate of trying to get to the heart of issues and problems and overcome them. At the end of the day, that's what role-playing is. It is our ability to find these boundaries within ourselves, within our gameplay, within our styles, and communicate with a group of friendly and amazing people in order to overcome and excel. And that's what I'd encourage people in that situation to do: to communicate, overcome, and excel.
Yeah, I would also say, so I've never been in a situation like that. So, but I would also say that I am neither an orc nor a hobbit.
Yes,
that is far more fantastical than pretending that I am a man. The space that we're playing in is a fantastical space. We're not in spaceships as either, but we can imagine. And the whole table is a space of imagination. So I would say enter into it in the space of imagination and don't feel threatened by other people's choices.
Generally speaking, if you can get to a stage where you're leaving the baggage at the door, you're always going to have a way better time. Like, honestly. Now, I've got an R-rated story to share. So I am going to put up a big kind of flashing red thing. Let me do this. Let me get an R rating stamp here. Janet, entertain
fingers
the
in your
masses.
ears and go la 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 la.
Yes, let me. Yes. Here we go. That'll do. You'll do. Come here, you. Boom! Look at that. Oh God, that was too big. Bum bum bum. There we go. Okay, so that's up there. So while this thing is up there, be warned, be advised, viewer discretion is advised. This is a very, very, very mature story that I am going to tell. I will remove this once the story is done so that you can continue watching. So, among the characters that I had played, I played basically Death. Right, I played a guy named Shroud. He was a bold dude. He carried a scythe. He killed people when he touched them. That was his shtick.
Clown.
And And what I found was one of the players at my table was playing a prostitute, and that's fine. We were in an understanding game. We knew exactly what we were getting into and the like.
Oldest profession in the world. Yep.
Now I no look, I am a very very big advocate of women's rights, and I do have, like, my best friends are women, and I dislike when people portray them in very negative stereotypes. This
Right.
prostitute was an incredibly offensive negative stereotype of a woman. I let that go for a while because, again, I didn't know the player too well. I thought maybe his character was going somewhere. It never did. But things took a very sharp and rather difficult turn when his character snuck into my character's room and then proceeded to rape him. Now, at this point, it would have been very easy for my character to literally rip her to tiny fucking pieces. And I swear I was so tempted to do so. Just because, A, that kind of non-consensual R-rated nonsense is just not on, right? Like, just let me start by saying that that's just flat out not on. Number two, in my mind, I was still thinking, what do I do with this narrative? What, as a man, do you do in this situation? And number three, of course, was, how do I salvage my character's relationship with this entire group and this entire adventure after this has happened? After discussing it with the player, and I basically told him outrightly, if you do this again, your character's dead. Like, I'm not even joking about this. Like, I'm letting this go because I'm trying to be a good player here, and I'm not trying to, kill your character. You've literally got that one shot because we did not discuss this. I have not outlined that I was going to kill your character if you attempted this. Now you know. If you do this, your character will die. I've talked to the DM. This is going to happen because that's unacceptable.
Yeah.
But what got me more than anything else was the fact that that was how this individual felt women should be portrayed. In my mind, that type of negativity, that type of very toxic, negative gender stereotype, I mean, exploring with friends is one thing. But without proper communication, when stuff like that happens, that should never happen. It should never be a scenario where you place that negativity towards another player, because that's just, you're just going to have a terrible time. I had a terrible time. Thankfully, the guy got the hint, and, he toned it down a bit. He redirected a lot of that energy that he had for his character in a different way. And he learnt that I am a different type of role player to perhaps what he was accustomed to. He was accustomed to playing a woman as a 13-year-old boy with a hypersexualized libido would treat a woman.
Yeah.
And that was the scenario that I found myself in. So bear that in mind. Like, again, from personal experience, if you find another person portraying something negative like that, look, stop, talk to your GM, or even just stop the game. Like, just say, look, this is making me very uncomfortable. I'm not having fun here. Because, you have the right to do so. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're a guy. It doesn't matter if you're a girl. It doesn't matter what the scenario is. If a person makes you feel uncomfortable like that in your game, tell them.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a difference between, we're both players and your character kicked my character in the knee, and that makes sense for the story, and something like that, which is actually, like, really a violation. Like, that's really not fine.
No, not at all. Ironically, and I will say this as well, that was not the only time the rape thing happened at games. Thankfully, not between players. And it was an actual acknowledged R-rated game. So we were kind of prepared.
I wanted to say.
Yes,
Yeah,
it was
as a GM, let your players know what they're in for, and if there's anything that could be triggering, you have to tell them in advance so that they don't end up in a situation where you break them.
Yeah, and as a player also express where your limits are, because that's super important for R18 games. This one particular game, we were playing an evil campaign. We had, assassins, murderers, villains, all that kind of stuff, and we acknowledged that there was going to be some pretty severe themes. Our group leader was an anti-paladin who, and I'm not even joking, we couldn't react to this because we weren't expecting it. We came across one of the female villains of the adventure. And without making any rolls whatsoever, because I think the GM was in shock when it happened, he went into the room, disrobed, raped the woman, and then took the leadership feat, and she became a companion.
I would like to say, from a grit perspective, it takes 2 minutes to take your armor off.
Yeah, no,
it's in the stats. It takes a while to get your armor on and off.
It should, and I figured that she'd at least. But you know what? Here's the weird thing. I thought she'd struggle, and as soon as he slammed the door shut, and because I was playing an assassin at the time, and I was sitting there going, I guess I'll look for treasure. And that became an ongoing gag, like just whenever he goes into a room with a female enemy, he would slam the door shut, and I'd go looking for treasure.
So would he.
So yes, there is a way to enjoy R-rated material. Just saying, that is not going to offend sensibilities or otherwise violate your GM or your other players. It just has to be something you agree to. It has to be something that you're friends with. I think there was actually a thing in the UK recently about someone who had crossed.
UK Games Expo.
Yes, yeah. That's right. That's right. Do you know much about that? I mean, what was
Sorry?
that? Stop it! No,
sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. No, you go first. No, no. Do you know much about the incident that I'm referring to? No.
No, not very much. All I know that is that somebody sat down at a table and there was a misunderstanding about what had happened to them, but there were very sexualized implications, and that it was very negative. And basically, somebody took a lot of risks at a public game, which they should not have done, and did not give enough warning. That's all I know about.
Yep. And it did result in quite severe punishments at the end of it. So yes, this is not something you mess around with. This is not something that you take lightly. So yes.
So sorry, it's also something that you need to know who is at the table before you do this.
Yes.
If you want to play an R-rated game, that's fine. Make sure you know who's at the table. Make sure they know exactly what they are in for, because and don't do it at a convention. Dear God, don't do that to people, because you don't know who's walking up to the table, and you don't want to set something in motion.
Oh yeah, even if someone's walking past the table, that can have its own implications. All right, I think that's enough of the R18 talk. So I'm gonna take my little sign down. So thank you for your patience and candor during that. Like I said, I've played in a lot of games, and I've seen the best and the worst of role playing in my time, and honestly, I think when it comes to role playing the other gender, there is definitely an area that we need to be careful about. But at the same time, as Janet said very, very early on at the start of this video, we cannot define ourselves by the fear of playing whatever we need to enjoy the game. We cannot be afraid to play female characters just because we're male. We cannot be afraid to play male characters just because we're female. We've already now done a video on performance and voices, and I highly recommend you guys check that out, because if you are worried about your portrayal of the other gender, then yeah, we have just the video for you guys, so you guys can enjoy that.
Full of tips and tricks.
Full of tips and tricks. Is there any other bits of advice you'd like to give before we leave off on role-playing the other gender?
Yeah, now, I know we've been talking a while, and Michael and I could talk for hours and hours because we have a lot of fun together.
We do.
And we're both super passionate about role playing and voice acting and all the rest. What the final takeaway I'd like to talk about is defining characters by other characters. So the stereotype, and this is something that Hollywood movies have given to us as well, is that the female is defined by her familial relationships. So a woman is defined by being the wife of, or the daughter of, or the sister of. And what you see on the other side, particularly in the role-playing space, is that somebody will create a male character who is a whole character, is you know, very nice. They got motivations, they have got class, a race, they've got some stuff going on. Like, great, who's their mother? No idea. Their siblings? No idea. These things affect how we behave as people. So there is that you can go too far and you can go not far enough. And I would urge you to consider the familiar relationships of your characters, but not let them define you. Just because somebody is a mother, that does not mean that that is all that they are, or a father. So
Sarah Connor.
Consider it and don't get stuck there, is all I would say about that. It's a trap.
Okay. I'm actually gonna to lean into this. I'm gonna share you guys. It's a secret that I keep. It is actually something I didn't want to share. It's something that I was not going to share, but I'm going to. This is actually my big secret for how I become a great role player in any and every group. It is what I like to call the Fantastic Four formula.
Okay.
The Fantastic Four formula is basically how I build and establish any and every kind of relationship. If we look at the Marvel series, the Fantastic Four, within the Fantastic Four themselves, we see the presence of almost every single relationship you can possess with an individual. You have the husband and wife couple of Sue Storm and Reed Richards. You have the student and apprentice between Johnny and Reed. You have the best friends between Benjamin and Reed themselves. You have the sibling rivalries between Sue and Johnny, and of course you have the friend rivalry between Ben and Johnny as well. In addition, you have kind of almost a motherly thing going on between the Thing and Sue as well. So by looking at the different relationships, what I tend to do is when I define my character by the relationships in their life, I pick an NPC and then pick one of the relationships from the Fantastic Four and establish that relationship with that NPC. I then pick one particular member of a group, and then I establish that relationship with that member. If I was to give it a great example, Jaggerjaw in the Ghost of Saltmarsh series, the NPC that I created was the relationship of a mother and son with the character of Nan. So the person who taught my character how to fix ships, how to enjoy and appreciate carpentry. I took that kind of sense of I am this big, sad, shark man who was shown kindness and compassion by a motherly figure, in the same way that the Thing, as a big hulking rock dude, was shown compassion by Sue. Then what I did with the group was I then started to look at a more romantic relationship with Indigo, who's played by Mairi. And that's looking at, obviously, Sue Storm and Reed Richards and their blossoming romance. So, just looking at those different aspects, I think it's not just a female character who can necessarily be defined by that, but the men as well can really stand to really dig their teeth in and explore the aspects of how does your family define you? What elements of these relationships round out your characters and make them more vibrant and more tangible in the world that you've built? So that's my secret Fantastic Four formula, and I do it in everything. If you watch any of my shows, any of the series, you'll always be able to pick a Fantastic Four relationship between myself and a member of the crew and an NPC. Everything. Guaranteed.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, when I create my own characters, and funnily enough, this is something that I saw later, much later, on a video by Guy Sklanders for How to Be a Great GM, who is, of course, our GM. So preparing for this game, I went and had a look at these videos because he was pretty much defining how to be a good player And I thought, well, if this is what you want from his players, I'd better figure it out. I did my research. What can I say? And he talks about, figuring out your character's parentage, figuring out your character's upbringing, figuring out who were the major mentors in their life. And these kinds of things are so important for defining who we are. I could tell you why I am how I am because of my experiences and my parenthood and my upbringing. And I'm sure that it's the same for most people listening. We are who we are because of where we come from and what has happened to us. And it is absolutely the same for our characters. And making those relationships with the people in our party as well, and making these burgeoning relationships, that's what is going to keep the party together. And that's what's going to create the drama, because that's where drama comes. If a person's sitting in a room by themselves, there's no drama. You need two people to create friction. You need two people to create the drama, and that's where this gold comes from. But if you're defined only by those relationships and you don't have your own character, that's where the danger comes from. So it's striking that balance, I think.
I think we've strayed from the gender topic and gone into general character building thing. So because I love talking about this sort of stuff, and because of course Janet is an awesome and incredible guest, I'm going to leave on one more thing as well, because I know we've said one more thing like 10 times now. So you guys have seen my channel. You know what this is all about. Don't pretend like this is your first time here. All right. So on that note as well, if you do want to create friction with NPCs, go nuts, right? It's just fuel for the GM. If you want to create friction between yourself and another player, make sure that you and that player sit down and work out that relationship together. I especially recommend this to people who play characters like paladins and characters who play like rogues, right? A lot of people ask me things like, oh, how does my paladin get along with my rogue? And how does this, that, and the other? Look, it's the same thing. Going back to genders, if you are playing someone who is from a matriarchal society and you are in a fundamental group of females with one male character, then you want to talk about that conflict as players. You want to say, well, are you actually okay if my character did treat your character like a pack mule or a workhorse? It might be a simple case of, yeah, no, that sounds fine. If my character can start working towards maybe changing your character's viewpoint or perspective on us as second-class citizens because of our gender, then that is how you approach that conflict, and that is how you build and add to it. But it needs to be in the front. It can't be something that's like, oh, well, I guess we'll see what happens, because I can't lie. I've seen it work once. And it was like freaking watching a unicorn. I was like, how the hell did you guys sort that out? Okay, whatever, fine. I'll accept it. But it's not the standard. Talk.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say the importance there of character arc and character development. So whatever conflict you're bringing in, for whatever reason, if it's bigotry, if it's dislike, if it's racism, if it's just a fundamental clash of personalities, there should be development. There should be arc, because otherwise it's boring. Like, you don't want to be having the same argument week after week with the same character. Like, nobody is around the table for that. Nobody's coming back for that. You want to make sure that your characters are developing and having varied views, and having on days and off days, even having relapses, and then moving forward and having moments of understanding that bring them to a new level. That's great storytelling. That's why we're all at the table.
Absolutely. You know what? And to give an example of precisely that, I was on another show with Guy on the How to Be a Great GM RPG channel called The Adventures of the Windswift. And my character was not getting along with one of the other characters at the table. This was my character of Mutaru and the other character of Blackston Rose. During the first season, we found out that we actually had a lot in common. We were clashing a lot. We were doing the same things. He was a very pragmatic player who was playing a very pragmatic character, and I was a person playing a very free-spirited, reckless bull in a china shop type character. So we didn't get on too well. Now, we could have just kept at each other's throats the entire way, but what I decided to do was I actually spoke with the player, and I suggested what became the trial of Blackston Rose. It was where my character had actually accused him of acting suspiciously enough that we were questioning whether or not he was a traitor. My character, we kind of decided pre-game, like just in the backgrounds, that my character was not going to win that court case, as it were, But what it did was it put my character in a position of, I suppose, apology. So I wanted to make up my mistake. I wanted to try and repair my relationship with Blackston. And because we agreed on this conflict hitting ahead, we managed to evolve and move our character's story together so we could make something fun. Had I not done that, had we simply just gone and just kept butting heads, I definitely think it would have just gotten to be a certain point of time where we just said, okay, cool, my character's leaving because I'm not having fun, the character's not really doing anything, and we're not getting along.
Right, exactly. When you see these things developing, you can talk about them. You know, that's one of the joys of this whole thing. Like, you can sit and say, well, how do we want to manage that? You know, we had a conversation with one of our players when we were talking about which direction their character was going to go in. And we sat down together and we were like, well, you could do this, or you could do this, and this would be cool, and that would be cool. And they had a thought, and then they came back to us. And you know what? It's the kind of thing that sort of informs us as well. And we know what to look for, and we know it's still improvisation, but it's improvisation where we know that they are laying down a hook, so we can pick it up and we can go to a place with it. And we make sure that everybody's having fun and everyone is serving the intentions of their characters.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, we've hit the 41-minute mark, so I am going to say that we are now done. We have reached our last moment. I'll probably break this episode into 2 episodes, which we'll release in the same 1 week, so that's fine. You'll get to see the whole thing. Yeah, it'll be released on Friday and on Sunday, so you'll have to wait at most a day to watch the whole thing. So there you go. So again, thank you so much, Janet. You have been an absolute delight in this entire series. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for your guidance and hanging out with us during this this awesome and amazing series. Tune in next time as we are going to explore even more demographics from our Rolling With series and exploring different aspects of other people's experiences through this awesome and amazing hobby that we all have the pleasure of sharing with one another. Thank you, of course, for watching. And of course, if you liked this video, please be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, go and check out all of our awesome stuff in the chat below. You know what? Because this is a massive video, we're going to give shout outs to everyone. So, yeah, go check out all the stuff that we've got here. We'll have Adventures of the Windswift, we'll have the Broken World Chronicles, we'll have D&D, we'll have How to Be a Great Game Master, we'll have World Anvil, we'll have everything. All of it. Go see it. It's all amazing. It's all awesome and incredible. And of course, if you have anything you want to add, if you have any questions that you would like either me or Janet to answer, please leave a comment below. I love hearing from you guys, and I'd love to be able to answer any questions that you guys have. I know this was a very big one, and I feel like we covered a lot of it, but I'm sure you guys have burning questions as well. So yeah, chat away in the comments below. Until next time, guys, as always, game hard or die trying. See yas!